All
Well,
right.
welcome, all of you. It's exciting to see your faces. We are here today for the third program in our series of in the Temple Chai Synagogue Vegan Challenge, and this is supported by Shamayim and Veg Fund by a grant, which we are excited about. First, I wanted to acknowledge that Temple Chai is located on the ancestral lands of the Akamel Ootam and the Hohokam people, which includes the Yavapai and the Hopi tribes. And I know as Jews, we certainly appreciate and especially understand that tie to the land. So wanted to just acknowledge that. Today's program is a Hanukkah program. It is the Great Oil Debate, as Sharona Feller has so brilliantly named it. And in preparation for celebrating Hanukkah, which will begin Thursday night, December 10th, first night. Today, we hope to explore some new ways to approach our Hanukkah holiday in our menus and to develop our mindfulness about the ethical, health, and environmental ramifications of our food choices, our everyday choices. So Rabbi Koppel will share some rabbinical wisdom about Hanukkah. Then we'll take a deeper dive into the oil questions with Ingrid Gold. She's going to lead us through a lot of oils. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the more solemn realities of the egg and dairy farming industry. And then we will begin talking about food, and we'll go through all kinds of recipes. We have 4 different sets of cooks and recipes to share. And then Cantor Emeritus Emerita Sharona Feller will close with some blessings for Hanukkah. And we're happy to share this all with you, Leanne. Might be your first Hanukkah celebration, I'm not sure, but just a taste of some of the themes of the holidays. So thank you, and I'll turn over to Rabbi Koppel.
Thank you so much. And as always, to Nona for her initiative and leadership in this group. The question is, what is Hanukkah, my Hanukkah? And that is exactly how the Talmudic debate begins about what this holiday is. And it's a reminder that the holiday was so little known after the events of the holiday, which were between the years 168 and 165 BCE, that the rabbis posed it as a question to try to understand what this holiday is about. And it's interesting to me, as someone who served in the military for 38 years, that this is the only holiday in the Jewish calendar that celebrates a military victory. And yet, as we see, the rabbis want to shift that emphasis from the military victory to a sense of the spiritual victory. There's a prayer that we add to our liturgy during the 8 days of Hanukkah, Al HaNisim, which could have given thanks for many aspects of the story, including the military victory, but the emphasis is first and foremost on the sense of miracles. And what I want to say about, as I fondly call it, the little jar of oil that could, is that the story about the oil is found nowhere in any of the contemporaneous sources of the holiday of Hanukkah. We know about Hanukkah from the first and second books of Maccabees, and it's not until hundreds of years later that we hear about the oil miracle. The original 8 days of Hanukkah, the original name of Hanukkah was Sukkot She B'Kislev, Sukkot, in the month of Kislev. The community did not have the opportunity to celebrate the holiday of Sukkot while they were at war. So as soon as the temple was recaptured and rededicated, Hanukkah means dedication, they wanted to observe the holiday that they had missed. So 8 days of Hanukkah for 8 days of Sukkot. And the shift to the emphasis on oil was probably politically motivated during the time of the Roman occupation of Jerusalem. It was not expedient to have a holiday where we celebrated our overthrow of foreign oppressors. So there was both a spiritual and a practical reason for shifting to the oil miracle. And the rabbis emphasized that shift by their choice of the Haftorah for the Shabbos of Hanukkah from the prophet Zechariah, not by might and not by power, but by my spirit. But even given the oil situation, it's interesting that we have 8 days of Hanukkah based on that story. Because what was the miracle the first day? They found enough oil for one day. They lit the menorah, the oil burned for one day. There was nothing miraculous about that. So there are those who argue, well, really, we should have only 7 days of Hanukkah if we're celebrating the miracle, because the first day there was no miracle. But we might, as a gloss on that, suggest that, well, there was a miracle. The miracle was not knowing where the resources were going to come from for the next 7 days, yet there was that faith and trust to go ahead and light anyway. So in that sense, Hanukkah has been described as a celebration of holy chutzpah, and a reminder of, for those who are Musar students, of the midah of bitachon, of trust. So trust, Alan Moranis of the Musar Institute reminds us, doesn't mean being reckless or choosing not to exercise good judgment, but it does mean recognizing that sometimes we don't see the whole picture, but we still need to be able to move forward, to trust, to always have hope, even when we feel like the odds might be against us. So every time we add to the lights of Hanukkah, as the lights build throughout the week of the holiday, it reminds us that even at this darkest time of the year, we can still trust and hope for light to come into our lives. Rabbi Alfredo Borodovsky expresses this beautifully as describing Hanukkah, the miracle of Hanukkah, as the miracle of constancy. And the point that he brings forward is that if you walked into the temple at any time on those 8 days, you wouldn't have known that there was a miracle going on. Everything would have just looked normal, like you walked in and the lights were on. So big deal. It's only when we pull back and we have the knowledge that the oil burned yesterday and the day before that the miracle becomes evident. So it's a reminder to us to notice and appreciate the miracles that are happening in the quiet constancy around us at all times. In the Amidah, we have the Modim prayer, which says in the text of that prayer, your miracles, we give thanks, Modim, for your miracles that are with us every day, morning, noon, and night. And unlike some of the other holidays that we have, we don't absent ourselves from our normal lives already in progress. During the holiday of Hanukkah, we're here, we're present in our lives, that they're not days that we take off from work. So it's we just go about our normal lives, but with this heightened consciousness of light, of miracles. There are those big splashy miracles, like the parting of the sea and the mountain being ablaze with the giving of the 10 commandments. But Hanukkah is kind of a time to connect with the more subtle miracles that are woven into the fabric of nature, so that we think of them as natural. I think Hanukkah also is a reminder that the soul of human beings is considered to be a flame of God. So when we look at the lights of the Chanukiah, we connect with the divine light within ourselves, and also with that spark of the divine that is in every person that we meet who is made in the image of God. So also a reminder of that important midah of honor. And finally, I would say at this particular Hanukkah, we think about how we can be that light for each other at this difficult moment that we face, that we hold each other up and we share that light. And one of the beautiful things about candlelight is that the candle light can light other candles and yet is in itself not diminished. So we think about how we can give to each other and gain light through that. We don't lose our own light when we share our light with others. So I want to thank all of you for sharing your light with us. We're going to turn it over to Ingrid now. And just once again, happy Hanukkah. I hope that you enjoy the lights.
Okay, I am going to attempt to share my screen. I put together some slides for this, so we'll see if it works. Here we go. Do you guys see the Temple High Vegan Challenge?
We sure do.
Okay. So Hanukkah, as Rabbi Capel said, celebrates the miracle of the oil lasting for 8 nights. And the oil was produced in a region called Tekoa, which was a 4-day trip from Jerusalem. So that's why it took 8 days to get more oil for the eternal flame. And to celebrate Hanukkah, we eat foods made with oil traditionally. So a lot of times we wonder which oil is the best. There are lots of issues. Ethical comes up. The world's leading cause of deforestation is planting of crops for soy and palm kernel oil. And this destroys the habitat of already endangered species like the orangutan, pygmy elephant, and rhino. And the forest loss coupled with conversion of carbon-rich peat soils are throwing out millions of tons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, contributing to climate change. Also, much of the palm oil industry exploits workers and uses child labor. Palm oil supplies 35% of the world's vegetable oil demand. And it's a very efficient crop. It does that on only 10% of the land. Another ethical issue for many is that Wesson brand, which is a popular cooking oil, is owned by ConAgra Foods, which has donated over $2.6 million to fight GMO labeling laws in the US, so that every time you buy their products, you help to fund these anti-labeling campaigns. There are so many terms. What do they all mean? Virgin oil, refined versus unrefined, cold press, smoke point. And by the way, we have a great reference on the Vegan Challenge website that gives smoke points of different oils. I did not include it in the slides today. And thank you, Bert, for providing that. Polyunsaturated, monosaturated, and saturated, MCT, which is medium chain triglycerides, trans fat, hydrogenated and partially hydrogenated, GMO, omega-3, and omega-6. So this only tells part of the story. No wonder we're confused. And this is just a handout from a health clinic telling people which oils to use, which not to use, and how to store them. But as you'll hear from me today, some of the oils that they talk about in being good oils may not be. And of course, the ones that they're saying to avoid are the animal fats, which are saturated, as well as the tropical oils like coconut and palm. Coconut oil actually has 50% more saturated acids than butter has. So how do they make oil? There are primarily 2 methods: conventional, which uses heat and chemicals to extract the oil, and expeller pressed, which can use heat to speed the process, or you've probably seen in the stores or bought cold expeller pressed, which is the healthiest. So how are they made? The general process used to create industrial seed oils is anything but natural. The oils extracted from soybeans, corn, cotton, safflower, and rape seeds And rape seeds are canola oil, but it's low uric acid. Uric acid is, they found, causes heart lesions. It's bad for the heart. So they bred rapeseed to be healthier. And it was done in Canada. So canola, Canadian oil is canola. They must be refined, bleached, and deodorized before they're suitable for human consumption. So first they're gathered. Next, they're heated to extremely high temperatures. And when they're heated, it causes the unsaturated fatty acids to oxidize, which creates byproducts that are harmful to human and animal health. And the seeds are then processed with a petroleum-based solvent such as hexane to maximize the amount of oil extracted from them, but some of that stays in the oil. Next, they use chemicals to deodorize the oils, and if they didn't, they would have a very bad smell to the oils. And then more chemicals are added to improve the color of the oils. Altogether, industrial seed oil processing creates an energy-dense, nutrient-poor oil that contains chemical residues, trans fats, and oxidized byproducts. And here it says trans fats. In canola oil, for example, that's conventional, about 4.6 is going to be trans fats. And there's a video here on producing olive oil, but I don't think we'll take the time to view that. It will be on the website as embedded in this presentation. So monosaturated, polyunsaturated, hydrogen, and trans fats. What do these terms mean? Monounsaturated fatty acids have one bond per molecule. They're liquid at room temperature, but become solid when refrigerated, like olive oil. And polyunsaturated fatty acids have 2 or 3 bonds per molecule and a much lower smoke point. They oxidize easily, are less stable, have a shorter shelf life, and don't have the same creamy texture. And then trans fats, which have been banned in many places, are inexpensive to produce, last a long time. You know that saying about like Twinkies, you can have them 30 years later or whatever, and they'd still be the same. They last a long time, and they add taste and texture to foods. They're made by hydrogenating liquid vegetable oil to make it solid, like Crisco, and they increase the bad cholesterol and lower the good cholesterol, so they do contribute to heart disease. So we've heard a lot about omega-3 and omega-6 acids. So these acids, the ideal ratio is 1:1, and that's what was in the diet of our ancestors. In the typical Western diet of today, it's about 16 times that, 16 or 15.5 omega-6 to 1 omega-3. And some oils are very high in omega-6, corn oil 46 to 1, palm oil 45 to 1, soy oil 16 to 1, and olive oil 13 to 1. And when there's an imbalance between the fatty acids, it's believed to contribute to lots of health issues, including inflammation, Alzheimer's, cancer, and arthritis, as well as heart issues. This chart, which again will be in the presentation, so I'm not going to go over it, talks about what the fatty acid content is in different oils. So how do you store your oils? It's better to buy the smallest bottle available. That way you buy it often and it's fresher that way. It hasn't broken down and oxidized. Also, the oil will oxidize when it's exposed to air, light, and heat, so you want a dark bottle. And it's best to store it in the refrigerator. Some oils, like olive, are going to become solid, but if you leave them out or run it under hot water, then it will liquefy. Walnut and sesame oils go bad much more quickly, and they are only good for up to 4 months, whereas refined oils, those that are chemically processed, like we talked about, you can probably keep them 12 months in your pantry. I wouldn't. So palm oil is used in over 50% of all processed foods. And we talked about some of the ethics of palm oil. It is possible to have sustainable palm oil. And so if you read your labels, you can buy foods that have sustainable palm oil because it's in most foods. It's a semi-solid at room temperature, and that way it keeps spreadable. It's like in peanut butter, and it's resistant to oxidation, and so it gives products a longer shelf life. It's stable at high temperatures. It helps give fried products a crispy and crunchy texture, and it's odorless and colorless, so it doesn't alter the look or smell of foods. And palm kernel oil is 80% saturated, whereas palm oil is only 50% saturated, only. So extra virgin olive oil, a lot of people have thought, well, that's a good oil. And I've even had people tell me they take a tablespoon of olive oil a day because they hear it's good for you. Well, unfortunately, studies have shown us that it damages the endothelial function just like regular olive oil does. And olive oil is a $1.5 billion industry in the US alone. And according to an investigative journalist who wrote a book on the topic, 70% of the extra virgin olive oil that's on the shelves is adulterated and cut with cheaper oils. So we've all heard, oh, coconut oil, it's so healthy. Well, that's not true. Coconut oil has been shown to raise cholesterol, both the good and bad kinds, more than any other plant-based oils. And the MCT or medium chain triglycerides are really only a small portion of the fatty acids in coconut oil. Canola oil actually has a good omega-3 ratio. It's only 2 to 1, which is a lot better than we saw on some of the other ones. But again, it's highly refined, most of the canola oil. And so if you buy organic cold expeller pressed, then you will have no GMOs, because if it says organic, it can't be GMO. And then you won't have all of the free radicals and oxidation, as well as the traces of the hexene and the trans fats from the processing. Oil is very calorically dense and offers little nutrition. 1 pound of oil has 4,000 calories. 1 pound of leafy greens, by comparison, has 100 calories. So
We had breakfast.
from a health standpoint, no oil is the best oil. When possible, buy and use organic, unrefined, cold processed vegetable oils. And keep oil in your menorah, not in your body.
Okay.
So with that, I will turn it over to Bert, who's going to tell us about his cooking.
Okay, yeah, you
Um,
wanna,
Just a minute. It's not Bert yet. It's to me and then to you and then to Bert. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Next time I go to Bert.
That's the
This time I
next
go to
one.
Nona.
Yeah, the
All
next
right.
one we talk.
Okay.
All right.
Nona, please tell us about animals and animal products.
And I promise there will be food soon. I promise. Although it's in our kitchens, not yours, but you know, we'll share the aesthetics of it with you. So I wanted to just share a little bit about the carbon footprint and the ethical footprint and the animal cruelty issues around eggs and dairy products. So we might ask, why should we care about the eggs and dairy products we use during Hanukkah? Does that matter? You know, if we're not eating brisket, we're not eating a big piece of meat. Does that matter? But it really does matter when you're trying to feed millions and millions of humans eggs and dairy products. The processes of the factory food farming are really pretty intense, and I want to just give us a sense of how we can be in the darkness of some of the practices around us. We can be a light to be an example to other people, or to be knowledgeable, or to just be mindful about the choices that we're making and the consequences of them. I think lots of times in modern life, there are many things we do that we kind of know there might be a dark side to it if we really knew about the production or the justice issues of the labor or whatever, and kind of like maybe if we don't know about it, we're not really complicit in it, or really don't, you know. And I feel like it's pretty important to know as much as we can about the implications of our choices, just so we are making mindful choices, and we can bring that sort of spiritual, soulful piece to our choices and to our holidays. So there's gonna be a little bit of the darkness, and I'll try not to be too dark, because that's hard. We don't want to start with this part because it's kind of sad, but I'm going to start with dairy industry facts and just talk a little bit from an environmental perspective. You know, cows produce lots of greenhouse gases, and their manure produces greenhouse gases. Their manure also causes a lot of runoff that is polluting to the fertilizer in it also is polluting to the areas around the places that are raising dairy cattle. Cattle drink a lot of water. Their crops that they consume use a lot of water. So there is a big impact of just water use for the industry of dairy animals, and lots of forests and prairies and wetlands and parts of the Amazon are all impacted by some of the industrial farming methods that are part of growing the food that the animals need to eat. The animal cruelty impact is harder to hear about. I think as women, we have a little bit of a sense of what it would be like to be constantly pregnant and constantly lactating. These poor cows, they're impregnated when they're really young to start giving milk. They are forcibly impregnated, artificially inseminated. They are kept constantly pregnant, lactating, or immediately postpartum, and then they're impregnated again. So they're always kind of pregnant, making milk. And they're exhausted. If you can imagine baby upon baby upon baby, they're exhausted. Their babies are taken away from them within a couple of days of birth. And it's not like they don't love their babies like we love our babies. That's a pretty common sentient creature commonality, that we would not want our babies torn away from us, and our babies would not want that to happen to them. Their lives are shortened by this constant having babies. For male calves, so the female cows are kept for production. The male calves are either raised to be often in dark cages where they don't even have the light of day, alone, to the age of maybe 16 weeks, and then used for veal. But mostly they are just killed because there is no incentive to keep them. Dairy cattle are not beef cattle, and they don't produce meat in the way that they're modified genetically to make milk and not meat. And so they are not just taken and raised in the meat industry. They are just killed. There are, it does make a difference to raise cattle on grass, and there are pasture-fed sources of dairy, and that's better if you're going to eat dairy, and there are people in your house who are going to eat dairy. There's definitely a better choice with pasture-fed dairy products, and I would encourage, if you were going to do that, to be willing to pay the higher price, because it costs more for eggs, it costs more for all products if you're going to do it in an ethical way. So don't begrudge that extra cost. That's just what it takes to do it. In terms of egg industry, so eggs are environmentally lots of water use. It's 53 gallons per egg to produce them by the time they eat and feed.
Wow.
So that's a lot of water. There's a terribly toxic manure runoff from, if you've ever lived or driven by egg farms, it's just horrible how they smell, and the nitrogen and phosphorus that runs off from them is very toxic. Lots of bacteria and pathogens in the dust. The workers that work in those plants are exposed to really pretty toxic stuff. A lot of OSHA claims, if they are actually doing things legally, lots of times these companies use either prison workers, as Ingrid was telling me, making like 30 cents an hour or something, or they use undocumented workers. They're not well paid for, and they're not protected well. So it's an abusive industry for their workers. I don't know who that is, but whoever phone that is.
Who is that?
In terms of relation is to mute. Yeah, let's mute everybody. Let me just, you got everybody? Okay.
Was that you? Who was it?
I don't know who it was. It wasn't me, I don't think.
Okay.
Anyway, in terms of animal cruelty issues, so the interesting thing, so an egg, it takes a hen 34 hours to lay one egg. Okay, so she is not producing so quickly, and we eat zillions of eggs all around the world, but Americans in particular. And so it takes a lot of hens to make all those eggs. So those eggs are, those hens are working really hard. There's lots and lots and lots of warehouses full of cages of hens who have multiple hens in about the space, the size of one piece of paper in cages. They're all cages stacked on top of each other in the factory farms. The excrement runs from the top to the bottom. They're filthy. They're fed antibiotics to try to control the filth. Their beaks are cut. The male chicks are killed because, again, they aren't making eggs. Sometimes they're ground up alive. It's just a really horrific industry. If you want to eat eggs, or someone in your family is going to still eat eggs, make sure you're buying certified humane eggs, because there are processes, there are people trying to make them less cruelly, but that industry is just very tough. So if something's cheap and there's lots of it, it's because it's a factory commodification of a form of life, and that's just a really tough thing. So that's enough of the darkness. Okay. And
Can I interject for a minute?
what? I'm sorry.
Can I interject for a minute?
Sure.
Or do you,
No,
or do
that's
you want
okay.
comments later?
That's okay.
Okay, two things, playing devil's advocate.
Uh-huh.
From a dietitian's point of view, there is, and you can find anything in the literature to support
Right.
you or whatever, but there are some benefits of having oil in your diet.
Mhm.
And the other thing, and I should just preface this by saying that I'm doing 2 or 3 vegan meals a day.
Mhm.
And the other thing is, an egg is the perfect food. So in some communities, you know, in some communities, that may be helpful for them, for that to be in their diet. But be that as it.
Right. And the nutritional side of it was not so much addressing, although there are also people who argue that you can get everything you need from plants and you really don't need that protein from eggs, as we have been sort of taught to. But I don't pretend to have that knowledge base exactly. So we're going to do more about eggs and egg substitutes in terms of just how to use them in food at further future programming, because it's a really big, interesting issue. And we're all used to cooking with eggs, and it's not the same necessarily to just take one egg substitute and sub it in. It's not quite that simple. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through our Hanukkah recipes. But thank you, Barb, I know that there are lots of perspectives on this, and so it's important to just read and be knowledgeable. I think it's just
Hey,
important.
Nona, can I
Yeah.
just ask you a question?
Sure.
This is the egg box that we
Right.
have in our refrigerator, and it
Right.
has a number of words, because I'm trying to figure out what.
Does it say certified humane?
No, it says organic,
Right.
it says cage free,
Right.
it says vegetarian fed.
Right.
It talks about what they have in it. It's the most trusted brand.
Right. That means a lot. Right.
But I don't see anything about humane.
Right. And you'll also see natural. You'll see a lot of words, a lot of omega-3 sometimes, because they're fed the chickens a certain diet. The vegetarian fed might be important in the sense that means they're not feeding the chicken byproducts back to the chickens, which is something that does happen in some situations where they grind up the baby chicks and then they feed them back to the chickens. And that's a terrible, that's a terrible.
And organic implies no antibiotics?
And organic implies that they're fed food that is organic. That's a good question about whether antibiotics are used. I think if there were no antibiotics used, it would say no antibiotics, right? Without antibiotics, but I'm not totally sure. I noticed, because I try to, that the cage free is interesting, because cage free doesn't really mean that they're running around free. It means there's like a door open somewhere in a building, and they theoretically might it does not necessarily guarantee that they've had a good chicken life, that they've been able to flap their wings. When they're in those cages, they can't even flap their wings. They
It
can't.
says laying hens diets contain no added hormones and antibiotics are not used in the production.
There we go. So that's good. That part is good. It doesn't mean they're humane yet. It will say certified humane if it is. And there are Vital Farms is one of the companies that is, and I don't know all the names of them, but so it's worth reading. Yeah. Alicia, you look like are you going to tell us something? No. Okay. I was going to say, if you have questions, put them in the chat. And what I did in the chat also was put a link to the archival place that Lisa Gildar is working so hard with the synagogue to create, with Marcy Beliak, to create a spot where we can put all of our recipes, all of our fact sheets, all of our information and articles. And we're not going to try to parallel the internet, but we're going to put the things that we've referenced in there. So you can go in there later and look. So hopefully that'll be helpful. And I also put the menu for the day up just so you can just reference what's coming. So I'm going to stop talking about animals right now and industries just to allow the program to flow. So now I'm going to go back to Ingrid and we're going to start talking about latkes and food. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm not. I'm misremembering. I'm going to switch hats from animals and dairy, and I'm going to talk about what I made. So I'm going to change my camera angle a little bit so you can see, if you can see. So I had a couple recipes that I found that I thought were really fun. First is this. This is a sweet potato pear soup, which is made with, it was very easy to make. It's made with leeks and pears and sweet potatoes and vegetable broth and some white wine and apple cider. And it was really delicious. And I used an immersion blender. You can food process it. So it could be cold or warm or hot. It was very tasty. We had it for lunch. And then I made these roasted pear and apple, roasted smashed pears and apples, which was so easy. Just cut them in half. Don't even have to peel them. Put them face down, put them in the oven, roast them for 30 to 40 minutes. And I'd recommend going to 40 minutes because they needed that much. The pears took longer to cook than I would have ever expected. Yeah. And then you just add cinnamon and, really however you want to season them, a little lemon juice, and you put brandy in it. There's some recommendations in the recipe. It just was really delicious. And I used some plant-based sour cream, which Mickey does not like. I like it. He said, no, that's not good. But it was the coconut, it's forager coconut cashew based sour cream, which looks a little gray. So you might find people like it or don't like it, but I thought it tasted fine. And then these latkes are so interesting. I made an Asian style coleslaw to go with it because I like the vinegar to cut the oil heaviness a little bit. So the coleslaw, we were trying to use 8 oils. I don't know if we successfully ever used 8 oils, but we were trying really hard. So the sesame oil was in the coleslaw. So that was part of why. And that was fun because whatever vegetable besides cabbage I had in my refrigerator, I put some peppers in, I put some apples in. The recipe just kind of encourages you to use what you want. So that was fun. And it's a really tasty sauce, a really tasty dressing that's an Asian tasting dressing, and that recipe's in there. And then these latkes are fascinating because they are a Chinese 5-spice. This would help if I turned the name toward you. Chinese 5-spice flavored, which is a real strong Asian flavor that you would recognize. And I used potatoes and sweet potatoes in them, and I fried them in, and it uses flaxseed egg. So I just put a little, this is from Whole Foods. This is a ground flaxseed, so easy to do. It's 1 tablespoon of flaxseed to 2 tablespoons of water, and you let it, warm water, and you let it sit and get a little gelatinous, and then you use that instead of eggs. It was a great binder. It didn't really change the flavor at all. And then the latkes I made in avocado oil, which I've never used for frying before. It has a really high heat point up to like 500 degrees, and it was great. We happened to just have a giant container because someone had left it at my daughter's house. And so it's usually a pretty pricey oil. I wouldn't have thought to use it. It didn't smoke at all. It didn't splatter hardly at all. It was kind of remarkable. So and I didn't use as much oil as I would have used with canola or something else. And then it's got this this Asian sauce on it that was with kind of exotic ingredients. It's hoisin sauce, mirin, which is a cooking wine, ume plum vinegar. This was like a big investment in Asian goods. I'm gonna have to cook a lot of Asian food now for the rest of the year, because there are lots of ingredients I haven't used before, but it was fun. It was very fun. And not quite, traditional Hanukkah-ish. So I have to say it didn't invoke quite the same feeling as normal latkes, but it was really tasty. So a good variant if you're tired of it. And the recipe that I put in the archives contains 5 different like ethnic seasonings of latkes. So it's latkes in Italian, latkes in Spanish, East Indian latkes. So it's kind of interesting. So, all right, I am going to turn myself over to Ingrid to talk about her latke recipe.
Okay, so I used the air fryer instead of pan frying. I used in the air fryer, and if you guys don't have air fryers, they're wonderful. And my recipes will be posted in the archive. I'm not sure if they're already there, but for the latkes themselves, I used red potatoes because that's what I had. And also I was able to retain the skin instead of peeling them. And it didn't really affect it at all because they're so thin skinned and you get more nutrients that way. And an onion, flour, 3 tablespoons of non-dairy milk, which is pretty interesting. Most latke recipes don't use milk. But with the, well, I'll tell you in a second, cornstarch, salt, and black pepper and baking powder. But I grated the onion and potato in the food processor, and then I squeezed out as much moisture as I could using cheesecloth. And that is real important, and that otherwise they'll be too moist and they won't fry as quickly and as well. And then I used avocado oil spray. After I mixed everything together in the bowl, I made little latke shaped pancakes, which I have on the plate here. You can see them. One has sour cream, 2 have applesauce, and the other one I'm going to put sour cream on in a minute, except it's made with tofu, and I'll tell you about that in a sec. And then I put the latkes on a plate and sprayed one side with olive oil, turned them over and sprayed the other side. I mean, not olive oil, avocado, and sprayed the other side with avocado. And the reason I did it that way is because if you spray them when they're in the basket of the air fryer, then sometimes it smokes. And so this way it doesn't smoke. So I wanted to tell you about the sour cream that I made for the top. Oh, and it tells you how long I cooked them. I cooked them at 8 minutes in the air fryer at 400 degrees. And then I flipped them over with a silicone spatula and did 5 more minutes at 400 in the air fryer. So I made this sour cream, and it's very much the texture and almost identical flavor to regular sour cream. And the ingredients in the sour cream, it's so easy. You use this silken tofu. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's in the Asian section. It's on the shelf. It's not in the refrigerator at the supermarket. And you use the silken tofu, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And you just put it in the blender and you've got the sour cream, and it's fantastic. And then I made sugar-free applesauce, also really easy. And I can't understand why they use sugar in applesauce because it's so sweet and so good. Okay, so there's are my recipes, and I am now going to turn it over to Bert.
Hey, Janet, here you go.
That was a great comment, Ingrid.
No, you have to look at it.
Okay.
Okay, and you can see me there. You see me?
I don't see you.
You should.
There you go. Okay.
Do people see me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I made 3 kinds of potato latkes. I made what I'm calling classic potato latkes. 2 kinds of classic potato latkes. They differ from each other. Only one of them I added this just egg stuff, which looks like it has mung bean and a bunch of other stuff in it, but it doesn't look too bad. And so the classic ones basically have potatoes, onions, matzo meal, and some potato starch. And then I also made another one, which I haven't had the recipe, given anybody the recipe for, but it was in the New York Times. A friend of mine sent it from Atlanta, where you just use potatoes and salt and pepper. So basically, what I did for the classic ones was I took the onion and the potatoes, and I used russet potatoes because they supposedly have a lot of starch in them. And then I also used Yukon Golds, kind of mixed them together. And I grated them in the food processor into strips. So you can use like strips. That's the best. That's the way I like to do it the best. And then I did the same thing that Ingrid did, was I stuck them, after that was done, I stuck them into the cheesecloth and squeezed out the liquid. And then I put the liquid aside and I let the starch settle, because you can use that starch later on. Then after that, I took what was left of the, the potato and the onion, and I put it into a towel. And then I dried it in the towel. I think it's really important to dry that stuff as much as possible, because then it really, as Ingrid said, it fries much more quickly. And so I always do that. I roll it into a towel. Then after that was done, I kind of made the batter with the onion and the potato, and I added the matzo meal and the potato starch that settled. And I also added a little bit extra potato starch. And this time I also put the baking powder in, because it was in a recipe that I looked at. I don't think it made any difference. I don't think you really need the baking powder. And then I fried them. I fried them in actually some of the oil that Janet used for her soup gagnotte, which was canola, grapeseed, and what was the other one? You remember? Grapeseed and some other thing.
Olive.
Olive oil. Yeah, exactly. Olive oil. And then I just kept on adding some canola, and then when I needed it. So that was these 2. And so the classic ones were split into ones where I added the egg, that just egg stuff, and when I didn't, and I couldn't really tell any difference. And the binding was fine for both of them, and I don't think you really need the egg. I usually add some egg, but I don't think you really need it. And then the last one I made was from the New York Times. And basically what you do is you take potatoes, you bake them for a little bit, and then I smoked them for a little bit until they got a little bit soft, and then you grate them the same way as I grated the potatoes before, form them into patties. And the nice thing about it is, if you want to stick them in the refrigerator, you can stick them in the fridge overnight. And then when you're ready to use them, you just take those patties and you fry them, same way you fry the other ones. And in terms of frying, I try to keep it above 340 degrees. So that was about it. Now it's Janet's turn. Okay.
Okay, I also made a fruit sauce to go with the latkes. And my recipe for fruit sauce is you take whatever's in the refrigerator, start with apples, and throw in berries. And I threw in some cranberries and a cinnamon stick. And I threw in a handful of cranberries, and it's delicious. So there it is, fruit sauce. And the other thing I made was soup gagnotte.
Can you bring them over a little bit closer?
This is the first time I've made soup gagnotte. because usually the last couple of years I've gotten them from Trader Joe's. And then before that, I got them at donut shops. So this was a new thing. I mean, this food, I mean, talk about healthy or unhealthy. My God, it's like grease dripping down your butt. Anyways, the thing about the sufganiyot, which was different, is it uses almond milk, but you could use soy milk or any other plant-based milk. It uses vegan butter. So for this purpose, I use this one. Of course, there's many different choices, but I like that one. And then you just, the dough is very nice according to this recipe that's on our website or online. And it's very easy to use. You just roll them. I rolled them into balls. Bert was kind enough to fry them for me. Thank you, Bert. And then the biggest challenge was inserting the jelly into the donut. Now, I don't have any of these special gizmos like pastry things or whatever. So I went into my closet and I found a syringe and I filled up some of the jam into the syringe, made a hole in the donut and just sort of plunged in the jam. And it worked fine, but I had to add a little water to the jam so it would come out of the hole of the syringe.
People can ask questions later.
And it's delicious. They're delicious. I mean, it's oil. How can it be bad? So I would recommend them. And if you compare them to regular sufganiyot, that usually has eggs, regular old eggs, and it has butter. So it's different in that way. Okay, done.
Janet, there was one question about whether you used the sticks or the bin of the butter. Did you use the formed sticks or did you use it out of the
Tub.
container? Used it
I
out of
used it out of the tub.
the, okay. All right.
And there's probably something bad about that. I don't know, but that's how I used it. And it was soft when I used it.
Thank you very much.
And I have to say, they're really delicious, all of this stuff.
Uh-huh.
Come over, have some with us.
Oh, I wish we could. All right, I think Sharona is next, right?
Yeah, hi, everybody.
Sharona.
Nice to see you. So I made crispy smashed potatoes with avocado garlic aioli. Sounds much more exotic than it was pretty easy to make. I know smashed potatoes have been around for a while. I just never made them. So I will show you what they look like. I think I can show you. Is that it?
Yeah.
You can see it?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. So it was just little Yukon potatoes. Remember the little guys here? And boil them and then smash them and then put them in the oven. And here I was using olive oil for both recipes and at 450. So, and you oil the sheet and then you smash them, put the potatoes on, put a little oil, salt and pepper on top of the potatoes, stick them in for a half hour and crispy, nice bottoms. Look at that. And then the aioli, the avocado aioli called for vegan mayonnaise that I didn't have, veganese or something. So I made it and it wasn't hard to make at all. And then, but you could just make a guacamole or something, you could put anything on it. So you didn't have to be exotic. It could just be fun, whatever you have. Do it with salsa. I mean, that would be delicious. So that's those potatoes. And I used oil. So, technically it's good for Hanukkah. The other thing I made was an olive oil, I'll tell you in a second, lemon, rosemary, and olive oil shortbread. And I know Cindy Kleiman has eaten them. Can you guys see those? I don't know how they look. Oh, there they
Cute.
are. Okay. So again, very, very easy to make. You don't taste the olive oil. You can adjust it and do whatever you want with it. And kind of a little crumbly, but I don't know what to do with that. But so you just eat it. You just eat it. That is not so
Crumb
crumbly.
it up and put it over ice cream.
Yeah,
And the
no,
dessert
no.
is too
really-
crumbly.
And the interesting thing about that recipe is that it uses powdered sugar. So I'm telling you, they took like 3 minutes to put together, and you could make it. And then I made one using vegan chocolate chips in it just to try it. Good, crumbly, but good, you know. So, and these, just wanted to say that you, for these shortbread cookies, and you put the fork in it. I don't know why. Why would you put a fork in it? Anybody know? To get the air in or something? I don't know.
Yeah, it helps you.
Okay.
It helps you to separate them when they're done, because they're impossible to cut.
Yeah. And I didn't even cut them on the line, the prick line, the fork line. But anyway, it worked out. I would definitely make these things again because it was easy and good. And I felt like, you know, the other thing is, if you keep kosher, doing vegan things for people is very easy because you don't have to worry about anything, right? It's just you can eat it with anything. So, and it's been a nice kind of adventure to go on to do this, to really try and to be very aware. And I'm learning a lot. So I'm very happy to be part of it. So those were my recipes. And I want to sing a song that, because we've talked a lot about latkes, excuse me, and then I'm going to finish with just a little reading. So you can. Let me see. I'll be there. I'll be with you in a second. I'm so mixed up that I cannot tell you. I'm sitting in this blender turning brown. I've made friends with the onions and the flour, and the cook is scouting oil in town. I sit here wondering what will come of me. I can't be eaten looking as I do. I need someone to take me out and cook me, or I'll really end up in a royal stew. I am a latke, I'm a latke, and I am waiting for Chanukkah to come. I am a latke, I'm a latke, and I am waiting for Chanukkah to come. Every holiday has food so special. I'd like to have that same attention too. I do not want to spend life in this blender, wondering what I'm supposed to do. Matzah and charoset are for Pesach, chopped liver and challah for Shabbat. You can make mock chopped liver, it's not a problem. Blintzes on Shavuot are delicious, and gefilte fish, no holidays without. I am a latke, I'm a latke, and I am waiting for Chanukkah to come. I am a latke, I'm a latke, and I am waiting for Chanukkah to come. It's important that I have an understanding of what it is that I'm supposed to do. You see, there are many who are homeless, with no jobs, no clothes, and very little food. It's so important that we all remember that while we have most of the things we need, we must remember those who have so little. We must help them. We must be the ones to feed. I am a latke, I'm a latke, and I am waiting for Chanukkah to come. I am a latke, I'm a latke, and I am waiting for Chanukkah to come. So as you eat your latkes this Chanukkah, you can think about the story of the latke. This is
Sharona?
called The Harmony of the Chanukiah by
Sharona?
Suzanne Sobransky. And this mirrors a lot what Rabbi Koppel said in the beginning. One candle lights another, and darkness is dispelled from the surrounding area. One candle lights two others, and the brightness reaches beyond what is near. One candle lights three others, and the closest corners are no longer dark. One candle lights four others, and the walls begin to shine with illumination. One candle lights five others, and the room begins to feel warm and inviting. One candle lights six others, and people begin to reflect the candle's glow. One candle lights seven others, and people farther away are attracted to the light. One candle lights eight others, and the world begins to take notice of the brilliance. 9 candles now burning harmoniously together. They have the power to dispel darkness. They have the power to shine light into our world. They have the power which comes from building one upon another, working together in harmony, achieving the brightest light they can shed. We can become like those candles. We can be candles igniting the flame to one another, candles shining brightly together, shedding a light which casts all people out of darkness and into a brilliant, better world. So we want to thank you all for being with us this afternoon. We want to wish you a Chag Sameach, just a sweet, happy, healthy holiday to you and to your family. And Nona, if you would like to just give a closing as to what's next on the horizon.
Oh, yes. We have, first I want to say, if anyone has questions, you can, I put my email in the chat. If you have questions you want to send to me, and we'll send them on to whoever they are appropriate for. And all the recipes and everything are, as we said, and the fact sheets are in our archives, which Lisa put I think we've got it in twice in the chat. We've got the link there. So our next programming will be on January 2nd. We have a double header coming up, January 2nd and January 10th. We are going to be showing the film, or we're going to be encouraging you to watch the film, and then we're going to gather and talk about it. January 2nd, we're having a movie night where you all find it yourself on your devices. The film is called Game Changers, and it is a really interesting film about high-level competitive athletes and their experience of going vegan, and how it improved their performance. And also it has some other information about health benefits and for cardiovascular disease and other issues. But it's a really highly motivating film, a very athletic oriented, kind of much more male oriented than most of the stuff around these this issue. So I think that there's lots of people who find it fascinating, and so that with some vegan snacks will be the content of the January 2nd evening, where we just suggest you eat some great vegan snacks, and we'll have some recipes, and then you can go watch the movie yourself. Then on January 10th, we have a really good panel of Rabbi Mari is going to be the facilitator. Rabbi Shmuley Yankovich is going to talk about Jewish ethics of veganism, and I can't remember the name. There's a physician who is an athlete who's going to speak, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about environmental issues with farming or with food a little bit more deeply. So that's the program, but it should be really interesting. And then who knows what kind of fascinating things are beyond that. So we have lots of ideas. So if you have ideas, we'd love to hear them. So any burning questions before we finish right now?
And I want to say happy cooking and happy experimenting with things.
Yeah.
If you come up with something great, let us know and we can share it with people.
Are we allowed to just make a comment?
Sure.
I really enjoyed this. I missed the first half of it. I'm sorry, someone popped by the house. I thought it was really fun watching Bert and eating after he did the demo. It kind of had that feeling like we were actually gathering together. So I loved having a Hanukkah song from Sharona. It was kind of brings back memories of being a mother with a young child.
So Alicia, I have recorded the whole program and I'll upload it to YouTube and get the link to Nona and she can send it to everyone.
Yeah, and the poem that Sharona read, I think I'd like to maybe like read a line each night with my family and reflect as a family on what that line means to us. Like that sounds like that'd be a fun thing to do with that poem.
That's lovely. Can I give
Send it
that
to
to
me.
Lisa?
Send
Okay,
it to me and I'll put it in the archives because I would like it too. I thought it was wonderful.
beautiful. Thank
And I
you.
love the song and the words. I didn't know if you added those or you.
No, that's the beauty of that song because it's not, Hanukkah's not just about us, right?
Right.
And it's what
I
we do
love
with
that.
that light and we take it out and we have work to do.
And
And Lisa, thank you for being the custodian of the archives. You know, that's
Oh, I'm learning so much.
it's a significant project and we appreciate your.
Sure, my pleasure.
For
Well,
those,
and I
for
would
those of
really-
us that are brand new to veganism, is there a book that anybody might recommend as a way of sort of getting started?
Ingrid, I would wonder if you have one source that you might suggest. There are some really good cookbooks, Ron, but
I think that
Ron, I would suggest that you go to the Forks Over Knives website, and they have a lot of resources, both in terms of information and education and recipes and like shopping lists, what staples you should have in your pantry and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a really good place to start. I think they have books, cookbooks also, but I don't have them.
Forks Over
I
Knives.
use the
It's
Another
on
mess
that
up.
archive, Ron. It's all in there. And
Okay,
there's all
great.
kinds of websites and books and
Great.
movies
Okay,
and
great.
recipes. So it's a
Okay.
great
Super.
resource.
All right,
Another
good.
thing to look at is Mark Bittman approached it from a different point of view, and he has 2 books out. One is Vegan by 6, and he
Right.
wrote that because he went to the doctor and his numbers were horrible. He was 35 or 45 pounds overweight, and the doctor said he needed to change. And he was like, well, I'm a chef. I cook, I taste, I eat. And he wound up doing strictly 2 out of 3 vegan meals a day. And then the third meal, which he typically did as dinner, could have been a tuna salad sandwich, or if he, were out, he would have a deck of card size piece of steak or chicken, something like that. So it was a way, he was doing it more for health reasons rather than ethical and environmental, but it's also a good way to ease you into a vegan diet. And then he also came out with a book too.
Mark Bittman,
The New York Times.
BITMAN, New York
Okay.
Times. He used to have a column in the New York Times.
Right.
So, and MARK.
Okay. Super, thank you.
Mhm.
That'll get us started.
well, thank you all. And I appreciate your enthusiastic engagement, and thank you all who cooked. And I hope you have a wonderful Hanukkah. And I think the need this year for support for people who are hungry and homeless is as high as probably any time that I remember in my lifetime. So I think whatever we can do for donations to the community will be extremely important to remember. So
Thank you so much for doing this, Nona.
certainly.
This was
Thank
great.
you all.
So much fun. Thank you all. Thank you for
Thanks,
your
Nona.
Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. It was great. Had a great time.
It was really good.
Fun.